Hello, I'm Devin Rue, a professional fantasy cartographer and illustrator, and you are listening to the Quip and Quill podcast.
Hello, I am Eren Angelini, pronouns are they, them. I am a comic colorist and fantasy artist specialized in TTRPGs and basically everything that is more or less like an elf and has swords. It's basically my jam. You can find me on Twitter, yes, I still call it Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Eren Angelini, and also my site, erenangelini.com, or my Patreon, the ArtVenturing Guild. And yeah, that's me.
Nice. I will have links to everything. Hopefully, sometimes I just completely forget.
I can send you the whole thing so you don't have to struggle to find them.
Awesome. Always appreciate it. And then also when I make this part into a video, I post everyone's art for to play in the background while it's on YouTube.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'll have to have you send me stuff as well. Please make sure that you have a watermark or your name or whatever on it in case somebody takes a screenshot. And
I have become extremely obnoxious with my watermarks. I took a page from your book. I'm just like, this is mine. You'll have to struggle if you want to steal it now.
Perfect. Let's talk about that.
Yes.
So I'm huge on put your logos, your name, something, anything on your image in a place where if somebody crops it, it'll look awkward or bad or whatever. Not only does this help people from stealing your art, it doesn't stop anybody, but it does deter some people. But it also just absolutely fucks up AI generators.
Yes, which is one of our main motivators.
Yes,
the moment,
absolutely.
The thing that annoys them the most is what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If anyone put my maps in one of those, it's just going to end up producing my logo all over every single one of them, and that's awesome. That's one of the reasons I also put it in the same spot.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
that's something I hadn't thought about yet. I'll have to think about that.
Yeah, this way it comes in the most clear. We're like, oh, this thing is a part of every single one. So if they type in my name, and specifically Devin Rue, it's going to come up with my logo on it because it's everywhere. And usually
it's
the
part
lower
of your
right-hand
style.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I'm hopefully fucking up AI training. I've been told that somebody thought that they were giving me a compliment by telling me they tried to search AI under my name and that my job, I had job security, I was safe. And I was like, don't put my name in anything like that, please.
Oh, yeah, I don't understand people who think that's a compliment. I had someone, because I was already using, I was basically using just like a signature on stuff and simply not uploading high resolution.
Yeah.
Online, and then I think I had started putting a watermark on something and on Instagram, and this very, very sad person, they must be really, really sad, they left a message saying, I will take this and I will put it into Midjourney and they will remove your signature. And I was just like, great, you have such a great life.
Right.
I feel so bad for you if you have to go on an artist's page on Instagram and say, I will use AI to remove your watermark. And it was not. It was a very petite, delicate, anyone with paint could have removed that thing. It didn't really take much. So the fact that not only you have to claim, publicly state you're going to do it to hurt me, but also that you can't even do it yourself.
Right.
Put it in an AI engine. It's like, well, sure, you're blocked. I don't care. Bye bye.
The funny thing is, Midjourney isn't free.
Right, yes.
Just become that artist's patron or buy a print, or what if you want the art, like, you don't have to pay Midjourney. Just pay the fucking artist.
Yeah, but also, do you want to steal it? Just take a screenshot and use it.
Right.
I don't support it, but I can't stop you if you're doing it, in the four walls of your home. It's not like I have a power to
Right.
connect to everyone who sees my artwork and uses it in their private spaces. I'm not gonna. It irritates me more. I had someone, bless them. I think that they did not understand the issue with it, but I had someone else when I posted, because 99% of I do a lot of character designs and like character art for people as commissions, and I post them on my Instagram. And there was this drawing of a badass kind of like albino tiefling with a lot of beautiful intricate horns, and she was super muscular, full of tattoos, very cool. And I posted it. I had posted it I think in 2019 when I did that commission, and then I think a couple of years ago I reposted it, and this person left a message saying, "Oh, I've been using this, as a NPC or a PC, I don't even remember, in my campaign for the past 2 years," and I was just like, "Listen, it clearly says in the description that this is a commission. It might have even tagged the commissioner. I don't remember, but it's just like, if you see this, first of all, you could have found me somewhere if you had Googled the image, because Google image search still worked pretty well at the time, and it's just like, you could have found me. But even if you didn't think about that, it says commission. Someone paid for this, and it's their character and their creation. As I said, I can't stop you from, using it in your own campaign, but just please don't tell me. Just please don't tell me.
All right.
I know you think it's a compliment, but it's a bit, tactless. As I said,
Right.
Please be mindful that this is someone else's character and someone else's money that created this thing.
So I'm really curious, because from a business standpoint, it is always important that you don't get a single payment for the majority of the work that you do. And it is far more sustainable of a living to be able to get numerous payments for a single piece of work that you create. Is it because someone else commissioned it, or are you this way with all of the work that you do?
So it's a very interesting topic. I was actually chatting about this with friends. I think it was last year we had a whole thing, because every once in a while online, it's one of those, it's kind of like one of the discourse subjects that pops up, of like someone who is understandably upset because maybe someone is using their OCs, as in their original characters, as their own. I've seen people who basically steal a character because they just use the original art from someone, and then they commission someone else to create more art of said character that didn't belong to them.
That's just fucking wrong.
That's also a bit kind of like, why?
Just hire the original artist, but all right.
Yeah, exactly, and it's kind of strange. Like, for me, I am protective of my characters, but I'm also aware that if I draw a beautiful elf rogue and you think he looks really cool and you want to use it as your character at home, I can't really stop you from doing that. Please don't ever tell me you do that, and please don't commission someone else to draw my character. Or maybe you can give them a picture of my character and ask them to do their own version of that character, and I'm fine with that. There's millions of ginger elves out there. I don't mind. It's not an original thing that no one's ever done. I think I get a little bit. It becomes a little bit difficult when it's a commission, because it's kind of like it's someone else's. Like someone else paid for that piece of art. So, and it, I can't do anything. I just say, again, I can't stop you from doing this. Just please be aware that someone else commissioned and paid for this to be done. So, just be thoughtful. Just don't advertise it online, because it's just a little bit not the most respectful or nicest if you just, wait for someone else to commission me and then you steal all the things and
Right.
everyone else has paid for. But
right. I mean, for the most part, I don't actually use portraits for NPCs, so I've never really gone online and thought about it. So
I perfectly
never dawned on
understand.
me.
No, absolutely. It made total sense, and that is why, even when this person commented, "Yo, I've been using this for 2 years," I'm not, I'm not getting upset. I know that
Right.
it's something that they saw, and I thought, "Oh, this character is so beautiful. It's so interesting," and I agree. It was a very beautiful, interesting character. I had lots of fun drawing it, and so I can't say, I'm banning you from my page. I will
Right.
probably say, "Hey, just so you know, someone else paid for this. This is their baby."
Right.
So they might be
They might
a
be
bit
precious
offended.
about it. Yeah.
They might be precious about it. So maybe, you can do that in, the safety and privacy of your own house, but just don't advertise it publicly, because that person might be seeing your comment right now as well. And if you really like my work and you have a cool tiefling in your campaign, maybe consider saving up and commissioning me to draw that your own version of that tiefling and not someone else's version of that tiefling.
So what are your rates, if I can ask?
Yes, so my rates, I'm just reopening commissions right now. At the moment of recording, they are open for priority access only, so like my patrons and the newsletter subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
But they will be open, I think, in a couple of weeks, so mid-May. So if you're, depending on when this goes live, between mid-May and June, I will be opening a series of a few batches of slots. Basically, at the moment, I will only be taking what I call character design commissions, or character art commissions, which are basically a full body of a character on a neutral background, which is usually a gray gradient. It's kind of like my signature background. I don't know, it's just a neutral thing that I like, because it makes the character stand out. And a single character is $400 US as a starting price, and then there's if the character has wings, or if they have a tiger familiar, or if they have a very elaborate armor, then there's some extras that I add on top of that. And I do both single characters or multiple characters. There's party options as well. And I've actually just now I've trying a different type of commission with the same kind of full body character, but it's more it's just flat colors and line art, so there's no rendering. Just because it's to give people a bit more of a more affordable version, because of course there's no rendering, so it takes me, as in for those who are not too familiar, rendering is basically bringing the character from the flat, just flat blue or flat gray, to the kind of painted fabrics and all the drapes and all the things, kind of giving it volume, and that takes some time. It takes a little bit of time. So having that flat option allows me to finish it quicker, and therefore also kind of it's a little bit more affordable than the big painterly piece.
How long does I mean, again, I hate saying average, but you know what I mean. How long do commissions take you?
It depends in general. So I don't ask a client to pay me unless I'm ready to start working on the piece, because I don't like taking payment in advance, and then especially sometimes working as a comic colorist, sometimes an editor messages me and is oh, I have this thing that needs to be done immediately, and so I have to pause basically everything else that I'm working on. So I usually, when I message someone, say, "Hi, I'm ready to start working on your commission, send me the payment," and then I'll start right away. And generally I mean, if the communication is quick and we understand each other very well from the beginning, so there's not too much back and forth, I can do your piece in 2 days. That's not a problem.
Nice.
But it has to be, I send you an email and you reply immediately. Let's say ideally it's 3 days, because I will do a rough sketch, which probably I spend a little bit more time on the face, kind of like to get the features right, because that's usually the most crucial part of the like, it has to look like the character, because otherwise it's a bit it's a bit of a disappointment. And then maybe like the hands are not fully drawn, but like the outfit, or like if they have a special equipment, like a special sword or something like that, I try to put like, those are always very readable. It's just not clean lines.
Right.
And I send that in, and I ask them to tell me if like the expression is wrong, or like the pose is a bit off, or like something like that. The rough, or like if they were imagining something slightly different from their outfit and things like that. So we fix that. If something needs to be fixed, then I do line art. So I clean all the lines, and I make a nice clean line art, and I put flat colors down, which are usually kind of like, for me, I start with kind of like the in-between color. So it's kind of like the medium color, and then I will add shadows and lights on top of that.
Right.
So it's kind of like the neutral local color. And so I send that line art and flat colors back in to be approved. And if that's approved, I do all the rendering, and add any like magical effects if there's any that need to be added, and I send that in. And that's basically, once they confirm that everything's fine, I just send the high resolution files, and we're done. So if it's a quick one and we don't have any particular back and forth, it's usually like, in a week, let's say, it's done.
Right. So I take it then you do this full time.
Yeah, I mean, the last nearly a year, I haven't been doing many commissions because I've been working on my crowdfunding. But I do this full time with coloring comics. I haven't been as much doing, as in like, I haven't been coloring comics as much lately because I don't have any monthlies. As in like any comics that come out every month that I'm working on at the moment. But there was a time when, I think in 2020 maybe, or 2021, I was basically doing full-time both. Which was a lot. So yeah, because there's a time in 2020 and 2021 when I was working on 1 or 2 comic series a month, and on top of that I was also doing commissions. And it was very intense. I'm glad that I'm not doing that anymore. Because comics are stressful, but they're good. But yeah, so at the moment, I'm just about done with my crowdfunding work, and that took a lot of time and was very, very stressful. So I didn't want to open commissions because I didn't have the time or the energy to have that. And since it's the skill of being able to say I don't have time for this right now, that I know some of us struggle with, and I've struggled with it a lot, as shown by the fact that I was working on too many things at once in 2020 and 2021, and now I'm getting a little better with that. So yeah, actually my commissions haven't been open for I think at least a year.
Yeah, mine. So I've only been doing commercial commissions now for roughly 2 years. And last year I was like, I still can't get to my own projects. So I started actually for the first time. So I've been doing this for close to 10 years now. And I'm like, I can't keep going. I don't get to do any of my own projects. I don't get to do any of the things that I originally wanted. And I just started last year, stopped saying yes to projects, which is so hard to do.
So hard.
I mean, one, not only do you not want to turn down work, especially if it's really interesting, One, because you think like, what happens if I say no and then I have no other work?
Yes.
You know, like,
Yes. What if I do my thing and then no one buys my thing?
right. So, yeah. So but for the first time in close to 10 years, I have no commissions lined up. I have a couple of companies that I'm sort of like on call. So if they're like, hey, we have a project, I absolutely say yes to. But like right now, I've got nothing on my calendar, and it is the weirdest thing. This is, again, I don't know. I totally know what to do with myself. I have tons of work.
That's another thing that we do. We always have more work lined up
Yeah.
somewhere, or if we don't, we make it up.
Right, exactly. So, but I'm both excited and intimidated by having my schedule open, that I'm like, I don't know. Do I just cram it full of stuff again? And then, I'm not going to. I have a tarot deck that I need to get through.
Yes. Yes. Your tarot deck. How's that going?
It's I'm pretty sure I'm a glutton for punishment at this point. So not only have I decided, like, I wanted to create meanings for the cards instead of like going through the traditional tarot deck. It's very loosely based on it, and more has to do with like the artwork or what it would mean. But on top of that, I decided I wanted to incorporate world building into the deck. So if you weren't into tarot, but you wanted to create a world and you didn't quite know, like, you're at a region, maybe you're stuck for ideas or whatever, you could pull a card and it could give you an idea or a prompt.
Amazing.
Right. So I started doing that and then doing the artwork for it. And then I was like, hey, I want to make this a little bit more nuanced. So then I'm adding star constellation cards because it's me.
Why not?
Right. And then I decided, you know what? I want to make some deity cards as well.
Oh, gosh.
So it went from like, originally I was just going to make the major arcana cards, and like, so that's what, 22. And then I was like, no, I want to make a whole deck. I'm just going to put the maps on the other cards. And then it went up to 72. And then I added the 12 constellations. I'm up to 90. So now I'm close to 100 cards in.
I feel you. The crowdfunding that I was mentioning, it's a deck of system agnostic NPCs for TTRPGs, and there's 165 of them, so I can relate.
Did yours start off as that many?
Yes, it actually started off as way more, because it's the evolution of the project that I have on Patreon. Because my Patreon is essentially a library of NPC or PC artwork portraits. So basically every month my patrons can choose a subject, and they between like a few options that I provide them, and then they get to suggest, based on the theme that they choose, character ideas, and I create 10 kind of like headshots.
Right.
Based on their ideas and kind of like how I interpret them or like how I mix them. And it's been going on for a while, and there's more than 300 portraits in the Patreon at the moment. Yeah, it's big. And so I've always wanted to do kind of like an art book or a series of things and stuff like that with my work. And then it turned out to be basically this deck of characters. And yeah, initially I thought, no one's going to like it unless it's huge. And, there has to be at least 250 characters. And then luckily some kind souls and friends were like, I really don't think you need to do
that many.
I think, at least. So I narrowed it down to 135 for the main deck. And there's 2 expansions of 15 characters each.
Yeah, and none of my friends have been like, you shouldn't do this much.
I'm sorry, I think it's too late, but I will try. Devin, you don't have to do it.
Yes, I do.
You're still on time.
No, I do. You don't understand. I have to.
Okay, it's true. Yeah. I understand the urge.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I very much understand that need of like, but if I do this thing as well, it's going to be even cooler.
Oh yeah.
It's just very difficult to resist.
Well, part of this is because of this podcast and talking with so many people about world building and how their processes are and everything else. It's so interesting to me to like how many people just like leave things to chance. Part of this is because I have a bunch of people that keep tagging me in things like, oh, did you ever hear about looking at a bunch of snow and turning it into a map, or rolling dice on the table and then turning that into a map? And I'm like, no, because I use earth sciences. Like, I've heard of it. I just don't do it because I already know what's going to go on a map and where it should and blah, blah, blah. So, but as far as like the world events and everything else go, I realize there's so many people that are like, I don't know what to put here. And I was like, oh, I could help with that. And then I was, so for my patrons, I do like one-on-one world building, and based on their map, I'll tell them like what kind of culture would most likely spring up in that area, or, you know, what the topography tells me of like what kind of biome would be there, or the weather would be like, or whatever. And I give them tons of ideas of what they can do as far as cultures and traditions and everything else go. And somebody said, like, do you just have like all of these written down? Is there like a place that we could go for ideas when we get stuck? And I was like, no, I've never thought of writing them down, and I don't know how I would categorize that into a book, because like, how do you know what you're looking up, kind of thing. And then I was like, you know, let's just do it with dice. Let's just randomly, well, or with cards, I should say, and just randomly draw from the deck.
I think that's great. I think it's really fun. It's one of the things that I've like one of the reasons why I kept my own deck system agnostic. It's just because I want people to be able to adapt it to whatever they need. Like, I don't also luckily
Right.
I had already kind of like planned to make a system agnostic, also because I didn't really have the technical knowledge to make it like specific to D&D, or like
Right.
even less to anything else. Because I've actually started playing again quite recently after like a 10 plus years hiatus. So I didn't feel like I could do the technical thing and make it D&D specific. And then also the whole disaster with the license and, and everything came up.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm very glad that I made the decision to keep the system agnostic, because otherwise, basically I was already like the work that I started doing, like planning and thinking about things, were like, yeah, in October of 2022, and then the Kickstarter happened in like the summer of 2023. So when the whole OGL thing exploded, I was still like in planning phase. But I was glad that I had chosen the distance option, because it was a huge relief.
Right. I mean, it is one of the reasons why, even from the very beginning, I was like, none of my maps are system specific. Like, I mean, other than like if somebody commissions me to do the Sword Coast or Faerun, specifically if Wizards, before somebody messages me, it's copyrighted. Wizards has to commission me for Faerun, or and they did the Sword Coast. Those are the only ones that are sort of system specific. Otherwise, all of my maps, you could any game you want to play, any system you want to play in, it's just a map. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't work that way. Half of them don't even have a scale, which I love, because I have so many people that are like, what is the scale of this map? Whatever you need it to be.
Yeah, it's so much better. Then it's free enough that everyone can make it whatever they want, and it's informative enough that they're not alone in their creation process.
Exactly. Like, no, I want to give DMs, GMs as much freedom as possible. So, like, if they need it to be a huge distance, between cities or whatever, they can just say like the icons or the names or whatever are just, grossly out of scale. Or, I mean, again, it's just a representational map. You shouldn't be gridding across a whole map anyhow, because that's not how travel works.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, medieval maps were not particularly, those beautiful, like, ancient maps with the sea monsters and, like,
Right.
the lions are here and everything else is there. It's the message.
Right.
Maps can be lots of different things,
Exactly.
and it's up to you.
Even if they are perfectly to scale somehow, and it doesn't mean that just because something is 5 miles away from something means that you could walk there.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
There's so many things. Like, my favorite thing to whenever we're talking about world building and someone wants to put, well, I need this place to be isolated or this place to not, have a bunch of travel. First of all, people just didn't travel back then. It was just arduous and very risky. And not only just because, you might get lost, there was no GPS, there's bandits, you can get sick from something, there's no way to call for any help if something breaks down or you get injured.
Absolutely.
So, like, travel at that point was so dangerous that nobody did unless it was absolutely necessary.
Yes, I was actually talking about this with my husband a few weeks ago because he's a historical researcher, and a question came up of like how long would it take from like Paris to Rome in like medieval times or like 1500s, and it's just like probably 3 weeks.
Yeah,
because if you're a rich courier, maybe you get to take the best horses at all the stations, and you have the fast beast that can run as much as. But otherwise, people cannot afford that, or like needed rest. Your animal needed rest.
Yeah,
it's just it's a huge thing. The fact that it's that Paris to Rome is not that far away doesn't mean that everyone can actually do it.
Right. Exactly. And, plus, you're leaving your home for that long unattended because nobody could, who could afford security to watch their house while they leave for 3 weeks? But also, like, the worst biome to actually try to traverse is not a mountainous region. Actually, hiking a mountain's fairly easy. It's going through a swamp or wetlands that is the hardest to do.
Oh, yeah.
Not only do you not necessarily know what you're stepping in or how deep it is, because it can look like land and not be, and also depending on the wetlands that you go, marsh, bog, swamp, the insects, the predators in those types of biomes, the smell for that matter. Yeah, it's a slog to go through, and you are most likely going to get sick, especially if you're traveling through it for any length of time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm like, if you want to isolate an area, put it in a swamp. Stop drawing mountains and circles around towns.
If it's a world where magic exists,
Yeah.
You can always put magic in it and make sure that it's somehow perilous. Everywhere can be changed.
Exactly, so it doesn't have to be through necessarily something on your map. So you did a Kickstarter, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Oh God, I love asking this question because I am on the fence as to whether or not I want to do a Kickstarter for my tarot deck. So, how did you find the experience? Would you do it again? What would you change if you did? Or what would you do if you're like, okay, I don't want to ever do a Kickstarter again, but I want to do something else? What would you do different?
Okay, so
I know, right? It's a loaded question.
I'm actually very much leaning towards I never want to do this again. For a number of reasons. So the first thing, I said yes, I did a Kickstarter because kind of like Kickstarter is the verb that we now use for crowdfunding, like we all. But I used BackerKit instead of Kickstarter, and the original reason why I used BackerKit instead of Kickstarter was because Kickstarter doesn't really have a policy on AI.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, basically, because they don't really. I mean, back in the day, they used to approve every single project, but now it's kind of like basically everyone who wants to launch Kickstarter, I believe, I might be wrong, but I believe can launch a project as long as you like set up the page properly and you have the technical stuff to launch the project. And I wasn't too keen on that, especially because it was still, I mean, it's not that now it's old stuff, but it was very, 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 very fresh. The explosion of AI and a lot of the initial discourse on is this fine, is this okay? And a lot of projects, especially in TTRPG spaces, were brought to, Kickstarter and other campaigns with AI images in them. And I was just like, you know what, I'm not really too comfortable with that. And BackerKit, which, for those who are not too familiar, is basically used to be a company that basically helped creators who had done a Kickstarter on Kickstarter to manage and then fulfill kind of like the digital side of fulfillment and managing a project after the campaign was finished. And then they launched their own a crowdfunding campaign, so you can now do a Kickstarter on BackerKit. And they're smaller, but since they have been working as kind of like support for the Kickstarter for many, many, many decades, they hold the experience and they had kind of like a good network. And when I approached them in January, February, maybe it was last year, they were in beta, so they were closed. They were only accepting projects that had been pitched and approved by them. And so I was able to pitch them the project. They liked it, and it was like, yeah, sure, let's do this together. And I was assigned like a manager that helped me set up the project and understand, because it was my first crowdfunding. I've never done it before, and I did it fully on my own. And
God, that's scary.
It was scary. It was very scary. So I initially chose BackerKit because of that. I would say they still have. Since then, actually, when my campaign was running, there was an instance of them having a campaign that had AI images in it, and I made a lot of noise about it. And they, I had a long chat with their the person who's in charge of like policies and stuff like that. And since then, they did release a statement in which they say that they don't approve of the use of AI in projects, like as a replacement or like a substitute for like art and things like that. That you can use maybe AI for like a promo picture, but you have to state that it is AI and that like it will not be featured in the final project, or like because basically the project I was on at the time was showing these super like they looked like 3D rendering images, which to the eye of someone like me I immediately recognized it was AI, but a lot of other people who are not artists, they're not professionals in this field, did not know that, and it was not stated anywhere on the project page. And basically then the creator started hiring people off of Fiverr to make drawings that were, as you can imagine, very, 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 very amateur level. And that's being very kind. So for me, that was like, that's straight out scam, because you're selling a project that it's not looking like what you're describing. So luckily BackerKit understood, and they were like, yeah, we don't want that to happen. So they do have like ethically, I I like them more, but I will say I have probably damaged my project because they're really, even if it's like strong enough that a lot of huge projects get funded on BackerKit, and like there's lots of like projects that have earned millions on there, but for a smaller project like mine, fully independent, maybe Kickstarter would have been a better choice financially.
Right. Did you get more exposure?
Yeah, you just get more exposure. And of course, you know, you can't, please, to everyone who's listening in general, like, don't think that just doing it on Kickstarter is going to do the job for you.
Right.
There's a lot of goes behind it. I had, you know, taken care to build a big, like, newsletter and just a big mailing list. So people who had supported me throughout the years, financially or not financially, but like, had, you know, I have my patrons, I had audience, like my audience online, and like when I launched the project, I had like a email list of more than 1,000 people that had like directly supported me financially in a project or another, bought from my shop, you know, getting like maybe they had downloaded some of my freebies online in exchange for, you know, their email address and things like that. And even if I had a good mailing list, and basically when you import your mailing list on BackerKit, it tells you how many of those people have used BackerKit before, which tells you, you know, of course, if you have people who are familiar with the crowdfunding scene, it's more likely that they will invest in your project because they are familiar with it. Because a lot of people still, you know, there's lots of people who have never backed a campaign and therefore are a little bit reticent when you say, oh, give me your money, and like in several months you'll get a thing. It's very difficult. So luckily, like I think like 60% of the people who were in my email list had used BackerKit before, so it was like a great start. And I funded pretty quickly, but still, even if the project was funded and it was successful, the amount of money that went into the project itself, basically everyone else on the project earned more than I will make out of this project.
Right.
So because I also believe in paying fairly for the work of my peers, so I had a wonderful editor and a wonderful cultural consultant and a wonderful person who took care of my trailer for the campaign. And it's just, yeah, basically all in all, considering that I started actively working on this project probably around this time last year, and we are now on Monday or Tuesday, production of the decks should start. So it's been a year, and if by the end of this I can keep $4,000, I'll be lucky.
Wow.
Yeah, and the project, I think at the end was about something like $28,000. That's to give you an idea.
So, okay. So, where do you think, or do you already know where the majority of what would have been your profits went? Was it?
Oh yeah, I have all my expenses tracked. I am very meticulous. So a lot of it, so of course, I mean, the BackerKit takes a percentage of the site, just like Kickstarter, but it was not like a huge, and it's like they're good. Like you should know in advance, more or less the percentage. The more you earn, the less you pay them as well, I think.
Okay.
And I think a lot of my so there's marketing was the first set of expenses, so like paying for ads. Unfortunately, the BackerKit ads were not particularly successful, and they didn't really bring a lot of of money for me in general. But they were fairly good rates in general. I paid, of course, the cultural consultant and the editor was about 2,000 each, more or less.
Okay.
The video editor was about a little bit more than 1,000. The production of the deck itself, it's $8,000. And it's a fairly big deck. It's 165 cards back, like all different fronts and backs.
Right.
And they are stored in a cardboard box with like a magnetic lid. So basically, it kind of like opens like a book.
Right.
Because the whole thing, so it's called the Arcane Compendium, and it's like the whole box of it. It's shaped to look like an old tome, and so yeah, the deck itself and the expansions cost me about $8,000. I had to pay for a sample deck to be produced,
Right.
and then and that was included, I think, in the first payment. But then I had to pay for a second test because the manufacturer messed up the first sample, and they weren't able. This is the reason why we're not late, but we are late on my schedule. Like now, the deck should have been already in production by at least a month. I paid for the production at the end of December, and I got the deck should have been done the beginning of March. Because of course the manufacturer is in China and they are closed for most of February because of Chinese New Year, which I was aware of. I kind of like built the whole thing around that, and so they should have sent me the sample at the beginning of March. But then the plant where they're printing it was closed for a week longer than what they told me. And then when they sent me the sample, a few things had to be fixed as expected. That's why you do a pre-production sample. So some of the files were a bit too dark, and that was, of course, my responsibility, and I fixed that. But the text was printed basically a little bit offset. So instead of being nice and crisp, the lines of the text were blurred, because you imagine basically there's a letter and then there's the same letters slightly to the right and slightly to the left.
Gotcha.
So, and I was like, this gives me a headache looking at it, because it looked like it was moving basically, because it was just like the text was blurry,
right?
And when I told them, hey, there's this issue with the text, what the answer that we got from the plant was, oh yes, we printed it bad, we'll pay more attention next time. You can imagine how stressful that reply was.
Just a little.
I was just like, you have to produce 500 of these. I would have expected you to pay attention the first time round.
Right. Especially
because I don't have another test.
Right. This is the sample. Like, this is what you're going to be sending my people.
Yeah, exactly. So that was an issue, and we spent a month and a half trying to, because of course, basically I'm working with a company who's in the States, and then they work with the printer in China. So basically every email that I sent to the company in America and then took basically a day and a half to get back to me, because they with time zones. And so I pointed it out, and then we were trying to figure out why that happened, and it took them a week to tell us why that had happened, and how do we fix that. And I was trying to figure out, asking like technical questions, to figure out how to improve the contrast on my cards and make sure that they were not too dark, and then they would print nice and bright and beautiful as I wanted them. But they and I tried asking, as a comic colorist who's used to seeing their work in digital and then a printed version of what I see on my screen, I've kind of honed the skill of like knowing how much I can push
Right.
something in a way that it still looks good when it's printed, because of course colors on the screen are not the same as colors on paper.
Right.
And so I was trying to ask them, how much so like how much black can I put into the colors, like what's the like very technical like threshold levels and stuff, but I was not getting any feedback, and luckily I was able to figure things out through a friend who had also printed a similar type of product recently, and they were amazing. They gave me some great feedback, and I adjusted the brightness and the colors based on that. And then I said, look, I fixed that. They said that they were going to fix the text. We had some other couple problems. And I said, can they make like a test and send me pictures? And I'm like, no. Okay, well, I can't just blindly do this. And so I paid for another test that cost me another $150, I think, which arrived with another problem. Basically, the portraits that I had fixed looked great. There had been a problem with the borders of the cards that looked a little bit too dark, and I had addressed that issue. But basically, the plant thought that they had like to overfix it, and basically printed the cards in a way that the edge of the card would look. It's kind of like a teal color, and it was looking very dark gray before. And so I said, I just want it to look more blue, but I fixed it, and then basically they printed it more blue, which meant that the inside, because that's just the border of the card, and the inside, which is kind of like a scroll texture, so like a reddish scroll paper texture, looked gray. And that took 2 weeks of trying to figure out what they had done, if it was my mistake, and or if theirs, it was, how could I fix it? And then, of course, when they finally told us that they had basically overcompensated with the blue, and I was just like, okay, but did you do it on the other side of the cards as well? Because that looks good. And then it was just like trying to figure that out. And then, of course, when we finally figured it out, the past week, they've been on holiday again because they have other national holidays. So like finally on Monday after, I think the first test arrived. The first files I sent was like the 15th of January. And it's now the beginning of May. and finally they should send me the digital proofs on Monday or Tuesday to make sure that everything is lined up correctly, and then we'll finally move into production.
Oh my goodness.
And in all of that, I've had to pay for ads, Google ads, Facebook ads. I had to buy the barcodes for the products. I paid for proofreading. I paid for another surprise thing that I didn't know I had to do in December. My manufacturer told me that since the product is printed in China, when I export it to the States and also to Europe, it has to undergo chemical testing to make sure that there is no toxic stuff. And it was very confusing at the beginning because basically they told me that first they asked me if it was for kids, and I said no, it's not for kids. Let's say it's 14 plus, just because most and they said okay, and they said it still has to go under testing. And I asked a lot of friends who have produced similar projects, and it's still like most of them didn't have to do it, or you can choose not to do it, but then if it gets stopped at customs and it doesn't have this chemical test certificate, then it can be blocked and it might not be shipped.
Right.
So that was initially, they were like, yeah, it should be fine, a couple $100 should be fine. I was just like, well, sure, luckily I have those. Because it's not nothing. and it turns out it's going to be $800.
Oh my god.
Yep. So yeah, so if you sum up like the 8,000 of production, put it 2,000 here, 1,000 there, 800 plus this and this and that, and yeah, it quickly adds up.
Right.
And I will also most likely have to pay, since the manufacturer with the plant is nearly 2 months late on production. This means that, so initially the plan was to put all the decks on a ship, and then the ship goes from China to the fulfillment company, which is meant to be on the east coast of the States.
Okay.
And it takes 60 days to get there. That was not a problem initially because the decks were supposed to be done in late March, as in like production should have been started in late March, with the decks finished by late April. And plus 60 days, blah blah blah, it would have meant that shipping to the customers would have happened in July. But now that the decks are just now hopefully going to print, it means it takes about a month for them to be printed, and so that's June. And if you add 2 months to that, it's August, and that is if there's no hiccups. If there's any hiccups, they could arrive in September or even in October. In October, the prices for worldwide shipping go through the roof because of holiday season.
Right.
So if my deck is further delayed, I can very easily have my whole project completely bankrupt because of that. Because it will cost me. I will have to pay for the extra, because I can't tell my backers to pay for it. So I would have to compensate for the extra costs. So now I am working with my manufacturer to see if instead of shipping by boat, we can ship by plane, which would shorten the timeline quite a lot. But of course, it's going to be way more expensive. So yeah, but at this point, I'd rather make no money out of it and have it done as soon as possible than continue stressing over it, because as you can imagine, it's been a constant source of stress.
I'm sure.
And of course, in all of this, I haven't been able to work full time on comics or commissions because I've had to first finish all most of the artwork was done, but some, of course, since I usually do my portraits for Patreon as a square format, and these are kind of like tarot deck cards. So I had to expand some of the art, refine some of the pieces, fix them, and then I had to write all of the basically world building around the character, all the plot hooks, all the stories, and everything. So I haven't really been receiving my usual average monthly income for nearly a year.
So it's funded, and will you be able to sell any decks to recoup any profit?
No, luckily I have some extra. So basically the minimum order for the production of the deck with my manufacturer, but in general I would say with probably most kind of deck manufacturing, there's always, or whatever you're manufacturing, there's always a minimum order, except maybe for smaller local manufacturers. But mine, the minimum order was 500 units.
Right.
And I have, through the Kickstarter, the backer kit campaign, and then the post-campaign orders, because there's you have an option to basically keep your kind of a store open for as long as you want. I closed it in January when I was finalizing the numbers, because I didn't want to basically sell more than I was going to produce, of course.
Right.
And so I think in the end it's about 350 decks that are going to customers. And so the remaining 150 I will be selling locally at conventions.
Nice.
So that hopefully will help kind of balance out a little bit of the work that went into it. Because of course I can't just produce another one. because basically the whole point of doing the crowdfunding was to give me the funds, because otherwise I wouldn't have invested, $15,000 into producing this on my own.
How much are you selling the decks for?
So I think the deck, let me actually check because I don't remember exactly. Okay, so the deck is $40.
Oh, okay, that's not bad at all.
No, and then for the campaign so there's the deck, and then there's the 2 expansions that are like smaller, just kind of like booster package.
Mm-hmm.
And the deck came with one of the expansions, especially like if you got there was this during the campaign, not during the pre-order, so you had to buy them separately. But during the campaign, there was also kind of like the collector's edition that included both expansions, and there's like the legendary edition, which also include, because I'm doing a VTT version for people who play TTRPGs online and use specific platforms to do so. So basically, you had options to get both the physical, the digital, but also the virtual tabletop platform version. There were versions with commissions. So a few people who supported the project on BackerKit are now part of the deck. So they are in the deck.
Nice.
I created characters based on their portraits, or like their pet. Someone's cat is now a warrior in the deck, which I loved. And so there were the deck it's $40, kind of as a reference.
Also, I'm writing all this down while I'm talking to you because
yes, I'm happy to help.
Well, also because there's so I've been talking to tons of people with doing my crowdfunding. So the interesting thing is when having known so many people who have done things on Kickstarter and everything else, and hearing the horror stories, I don't think that a lot of people realize just how incredibly stressful they are.
Yeah, it's pretty tough.
Yeah. And especially when there's so many things that are out of your hands that, because you're working with so many other people that are across the world, just to do the minimum of what you want to do. Right. So, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of parts moving, and it's a lot of juggling for the people who do it. So part of me is like, I don't know if I would ever do a Kickstarter or do crowdfunding. I do love the idea of doing crowdfunding on my own. I've been looking into options of doing it on a website, or whether or not I would work with a smaller company to do it, or just do pre-orders. But I do think that there's a lot to be said for Kickstarter's ability to bring people to your project.
Yes, I think so. Especially someone like you who has an established name and an established audience. I think that is an added bonus, because people who go on Kickstarter and see, Devin Rude's new thing, and they're probably going to immediately associate that project with your name. That does bring power to your already strong start, because you can leverage the name, and that does make a difference and can help a lot. I know that I've been in the past years, I've worked with a very, very small publisher. It's a couple, Nova and Mali, who created a series of art books. It's stunning stuff. It's called Classics But Make It Gay, and
love it already.
Yes, I'm so proud to be part of this. It's wonderful. Basically, it was a series of 3 art books in which lots of artists from all over the world, different cultures, different lives, different genders, different identities, Basically everyone chose a classical painting and basically repainted it, making it inclusive. So there's different body shapes, there are different genders, different sexualities, different skin colors than what we're used to seeing in a lot of classical painting that is kind of like worldwide known. And we did the very first campaign we did was on Kickstarter. And then I think it was the second one already, that we moved away from Kickstarter and did pre-orders through a site, and for the third one as well. And they did see a difference, even if, it was established. The first Kickstarter went really, really well, and still the pre-orders and of the second and third volume still did great. We're very happy with how it went, but there was more struggle doing it through their own site and shop than compared to Kickstarter.
Right. Yeah, it's always so tempting because, anything that I can keep out of someone else's hands and I'm able to do, I try to, because I don't want the stress of of having to rely on someone else. But at the same time, it's like you have to kind of Kickstarter does carry its own weight and has its own people, and it is really, really well known for tarot decks. So it's one of the other reasons why I was like, well, I'll put it out there. But what ads did work for you?
I don't think any ad particularly worked for me. I don't know if it was the wrong way, but yeah, basically I did pre-campaign marketing with BackerKit. They offer it as a package, and they basically get a percentage on the sales that you make. You can do it. So in the beginning, when if you're familiar, when someone is about to launch a Kickstarter, and the BackerKit works the same way, they have kind of like a pre-launch page where it says this project is coming soon, and you can subscribe to that project. You can just put your email, and basically you will get notified as soon as the project launches. So basically both, I believe Kickstarter might do as well, I'm not sure, but definitely BackerKit offers you kind of like marketing on that as well. So they can push the project through their own newsletter and database and online to kind of like collect emails for you to present it to a wider audience. And so there is, I think, a cost or like per email collected, and then like when one of those emails or like when one of their basically connections that they make turns into a sale, they have a percentage on that.
Okay.
And I don't know, that wasn't particularly successful for me. Facebook ads, I asked a friend to help me because he's very, very good with this stuff, and we tried to figure them out. BackerKit did do Facebook ads and like meta ads, so Facebook and Instagram, for me, but it felt like it was very stagnating and it was not really offering much. And when I showed the results from the Facebook ads by BackerKit to my friend, who's the expert in Facebook ads, he was also a little bit disappointed by them. It was like, he said they should, like, with the audience that they have, they should be getting way more interaction. So I don't know if it was my project. They didn't really have a lot of feedback to like, oh, this is not working, let's try this other strategy, which is kind of like what I would expect from a marketing department whose job is to sell more of my things so they can get paid more.
If you did it again, would you work with a marketing company?
I mean, I would not work with their marketing. I might consider hiring someone, but it would also have to depend on the budget. I mean, honestly, I think luckily I've been really good at cultivating like my own little niche and my own newsletter, so I would probably mostly rely on that, and then I might try more the path of like sponsorship through TTRPG influencers, if you want to say that, but like people who have a big audience and offer sponsorship for projects and products and things like that. So maybe that would have been like a better way to spend more or less the same money, but get it in front of people who might be more interested in supporting projects.
Right.
But yeah, I did also Google ads. Again, I found those I'm not an expert on this stuff, so I probably did many things wrong as well. But all I could do was try and read up on this and consult my friend who's the marketing specialist, and he gave me some very good suggestions. But at some point, I just like, you know what, I'll just stop the ads because I'm just throwing money at it.
Right.
Yeah. So I think something that worked a little bit against me was that basically the backer kit team kind of like surprised me with the date. So I reached out to them in May. I think it was in April, and we talked about it for a while, and there was going to be a huge project in June happening on the site.
Mm-hmm.
And basically we were talking about the project back and forth, and I think at the beginning of May the manager of my project told me, you know what, let's launch beginning of June. And I was just like, no, I can't launch beginning of June. Right. I need to tell the people, like, that's basic. Even I'm not an expert, and I know that, like, you have to tell your supporters, you have to tell everyone, have to create hype and all of that. And basically, so we settled for launching in July instead. And that was because this huge project that was happening on Backer at the same time, which was Gloomhaven, the huge game and expansion and RPG. And basically, the person that was the manager of my project told me, they're definitely going to spotlight you. Like, I'm sure that we can get them to collaborate with you, or like for them to make a post about your thing. And I was just okay. If you say so. That sounds incredible, and they were saying, also the fact that they will be mid-campaign will also bring more people on the platform, and therefore more people will see your project as well. And it all sounded great to me, but then none of that happened, basically. Oh. So understandably, when the manager asked Gloomhaven to spotlight me, they were like, "Why?"
Right.
We're doing our own thing. They also, had their own projects and stuff, and so it was like that didn't really happen, and I didn't really get any of like the wave of people coming from there to me. My original project would have been to launch in October. So as you can imagine, launching in July is very different from launching in October.
Yeah.
Honestly, all in all, it turned out to be a good thing that I launched early, because then October was very, very busy month for me. I was also doing work from Critical Role at the time, so it was kind of like I ended up being extremely busy in October, so it's probably a good thing after all that I launched before, so that at least I was not also mid-campaign. Or that I didn't have to delay my campaign to maybe this year or something like that. But yeah, so basically I initially wanted to launch, and this is something that I would recommend to everyone who does a Kickstarter, so you and everyone else who's interested. If I had to do something like this again, I would have everything ready before I start. And that was my plan originally. That's why I wanted to start in October, because I wanted to have 85% of the project done. And I didn't. I had basically all of the art done, because it was mostly all done. I just had to, like, I don't know, maybe it took me a month to finish all the art, and then maybe a month and a half, because some of it was commissions for the deck. So like I had to negotiate with the people who wanted the characters, and chasing after clients and trying to get replies and all of that. But I would have rather had everything ready, because that would have alleviated a lot of the stress going into it.
Yeah. It's also like, because I had a bunch of people ask me the same thing, are you gonna, when are you doing the tarot deck? Why aren't you putting more out there? And I'm like, I want the entire deck done first, mostly because originally I wanted to bring in other artists to do a lot of work with me, but it sort of snowballed into me doing it because I realized, one, it worked really, really well for the theme that I was going for, which meant that I gave myself more work. Surprise, surprise. But the other thing was because I'm a little too nervous, especially it being my first crowdfunding, whether or not, having been a part of other ones and seeing other artists, not through any fault of their own sometimes, but like just stuff happens in life. You can't get the art done on time. You can't meet the deadlines. You're acting as an art director. You are answering a bunch of people. Even if you're only working with 5 people, it's still 5 people that you're managing the art with.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was working with the cultural consultant and the editor who were brilliant, but they were busy and life happens to me. So, and of course, basically I would write the characters and I would send them to the cultural consultant to make sure that everything was okay. And there again, did I have to hire, when we were talking about expenses, did I have to hire a cultural consultant? I didn't have to, but I wanted to, because I wanted to make sure that what I was creating was, done correctly, because I don't know everything. And luckily I did. There was no huge issues with what I was creating, and I didn't have to reevaluate my entire plan on everything. But the input of the consultant was crucial for me. And even if, he had said everything's great, there's nothing to change, I would have still considered that money well spent.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, the back and forth, of course, if he was busy, then it meant that the files had to wait, and then they had to go to the editor. And of course, if the editor was busy, then the file had to wait. And then to the proofreader, and if the proofreader is busy, it means that we have to wait. It's just how it is.
Yeah, and if you're working with artists and you get it, you do your sample deck, you get it back, their art is the art that's not quite working, then you have to go back to that artist. And I don't want to ever discourage somebody from working with a team of to create any project, but at the same time, the amount of Kickstarters that I watch just fail, because of so many unforeseen, constantly moving cogs, and some people just being very maybe disorganized or not really caring, or and again, things not a fault of their own, or just some people being assholes.
Yes, it happens.
Yeah,
some people are assholes. That's just how it is. or as you were saying, not everyone, even if the people that you work with are incredibly motivated and interested, it's very difficult that everyone else on the project will be as motivated as you are about your own thing.
Exactly.
And life happens. Sometimes as artists we have to choose between a project or another, or sleeping a little bit more or sleeping a little bit less. And I would always hope that people would choose to sleeping a little bit more, because I know how much of a difference it makes. But it's tough. It's teamwork is hard work. It's great, it's fulfilling, it's satisfying, but it's also hard work.
I absolutely love this. This is great, considering not only because of my own project, but how many other people. As an artist, I work with so many people who try and do Kickstarters, and it's interesting because the amount of questions that, or the amount of stuff that I watch these people go through and being so stressed out, I always feel really, really bad, but it also makes me never want to do crowdfunding. But there's no way to make this deck a reality otherwise. So I'm like, oh, it's a necessary evil. But yeah, I mean,
I would say it is a great resource. I think a lot of a lot of work and prep has to be done in advance, but
Yeah.
I think that especially with and I'm being very, very honest on this. I'm not just trying to be nice and everything, but
Right.
like with your work, with your name, just like as someone who is known in the community and in the space, I think it is a very, very strong project, and I think that a crowdfunding on whatever platform, but also probably on Kickstarter would be a good bet for me. I'm not the expert on this, but from my experience, I would say that I think that would be a good step.
I appreciate it. I don't know how to not be nervous about it.
I would say just allow yourself to be.
Yeah.
I think that as much as I am, as many of us, often plagued by imposter syndrome and all the doubts that we bring along, even if we are professionals and if we've been doing this for a long time, blah blah blah. We're very proud. I know that I'm capable. I know that I'm also very organized. I'm good for Kickstarters. I have a very structured approach
Right.
to things. And it is very tough, but I think that you are capable of doing it. So you have to be prepared, but
I have a long list of notes, of comments that I've gotten from people. I've specifically talked to people who do the same type of project that I'm doing, and I highly recommend this to other people, that if you have the opportunity, if you know somebody who has previously done a crowdfunding, whether it's Kickstarter, BackerKit, or whatever, and you have the opportunity to ask them a ton of questions, absolutely do.
Yeah, I confirm. I did the same thing. I did a bunch of research before doing my own project. Like I looked at similar projects like TTRPG decks of different types, and I talked to my friends who had done a tarot deck before. I talked to another couple of people who had done specific like TTRPG deck projects. And everyone, and it's not like the people who had done the tarot decks were friends, but the other person was like someone like more of an acquaintance. And so like he didn't have any obligation to give me information, but he did. It was very transparent. Like people in general, I think it's a strength of the artist community, and I would like to think that it's a strength of the TTRPG community as well, is that if you ask nicely and you don't just expect people to do the job for you, but if you ask politely and you're just being clear about, hey, can I ask you a couple of things, no pressure, no obligations or anything, people are willing to help.
Yes. I am going to say the best advice that I've seen so many times is absolutely update your backers.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Even if
I
it's
post
to say I have
updates.
nothing new.
Yes, absolutely. I post monthly up. So at the beginning of the deck, like the first couple of weeks, I think I updated them a little bit more. But then, yeah, on the 15th of the month, or a couple of days before or a couple of days after, but always around that day, I always post an update. And for example, now that production, I had posted in 15th of April, I posted about the second test that had come out faulty as well. And if on Monday things are approved, I will post, even if it's not been a month yet, I will still post and say, hey, just so you know, because I had said I will let you know as soon as basically everything goes through. But yeah, that is very important. And please just and like so far everyone's been very kind. I'm not late on my project yet, but still I just want to make sure that everyone is aware. And I'm keeping when I was still working on it, basically every month I would post like how many artworks had been done, how many of the character biographies I still had to write, how many had gone through the cultural consultant, how many had been approved by the editor. Like it's just good for everyone to be aware of what's happening.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I think one of the don't want to say comical, but in a way,
I'm scared already.
Well, okay, so I knew several people who have done Kickstarters. Where at the time that I talked to them on a more regular basis and was hearing everything. And I think the interesting thing for me was listening to them, have all of the issues, which I think really prepared me for like wanting to do a project of my own and how I wanted to structure it and how much of the work I wanted done beforehand, how many other people I want involved. Like it gave me a really, really good sense of creating a project that was far more done, completed, and ready to go before I even remotely, launched anything. Or as done as it can be. But afterwards, watching like all of the things that had gone wrong, manufacturers, with shipping, with lost containers, with an increase in shipping costs that shouldn't, that wasn't planned for, packaging materials that never arrived, or because for some reason one of a rather large project did not want to go through a fulfillment center, and which to a degree I kind of understand, not because monetarily, if you can go through someone else who can take that stress off of you, fantastic. But one of the people that I watched do this was doing it because they wanted to personally package everything. They wanted to include a bunch of little freebies and stuff, which was great.
Gosh.
Right. Until it ended up a few hundred of packages in their house.
Yeah, no. I never I think I considered fulfilling it myself for like 5 minutes at the very beginning, because I was talking to my friends Nova and Mali of the Classics But Make It Gay books, because they're amazing. They're powerhouses, and they do ship and package and ship themselves. But basically, that kind of like that thing becomes their full-time projects. They're freelancers, so basically they structure their work around it. So basically, when the shipment comes, and it's like these huge pallets of books, they spend 2 weeks doing that. But they have been doing that because we did also other like smaller books. They've done zines. So they have this perfected. They're great at it. They know what they have to do. They're super efficient. They sent these amazing, hilarious pictures of their house. There is just books everywhere, and I love them, with their cat just lounging around on every single box that they can find. But they're good at it. They know how to do it. And initially I had considered like basically hiring them, so like having the things go to them and them basically fulfilling it for me, especially because they're in the States. For people who are not aware, I'm Italian, but I live in the UK, and Brexit fucked us really hard. I will not sugarcoat this. So for me, like shipping from here made no sense. Unless I was producing in the UK, then maybe that would have, like, if the production was here, then it would have made more sense. But basically, I'm using the fulfillment company is a subsidiary of the manufacturer, so they are used to working together, so that I know that there's not going to be any, they have labeled this in a different way from how we, because that might happen as well. So they're used to working together. They know it, each other very well. And basically what I also, this is very good because I didn't know this going into it, but essentially what I'm doing on BackerKit, and you can do it on Kickstarter as well. So I've charged my backers for the item that they bought, and then shipping is charged separately. So shipping will be charged for my backers in like when the objects are ready to be shipped. And it works, but basically I wrote everywhere on my campaign page that the shipping is not included. And when I say everywhere, I mean it, like on every single line, everywhere it says shipping and duties are not included in the cost of the object that you are backing. And on the campaign page there was a little chart that said, depending on where you live in the world, what the expected shipping rate is. And that is something that I have calculated with my fulfillment company. Because, as you said, prices are not stable. Usually shipping prices will grow, like they will get higher. Yep. And especially, of course, do not ship during, like, from October to, I think, January, because of the holiday season. The prices skyrocket. But basically, every year in January, there is a new set of prices that is published. So I couldn't tell them in July 2023 what the precise price would have been in January 2024.
Right.
So I talked to my fulfillment company. They gave me the chart with the expected rates, and I worked with that. Luckily, the estimate that I made was great. That, like, we calculated the right prices, so the backers will pay what they were told to expect that they were going to be paying.
Right.
And so now when the shipping is ready to go, they will be charged for that. What that means is that I take the money from the shipment for the shipping costs that they pay in, let's say, July, and I basically give that to my fulfillment company. So I don't have to pay for shipping myself. Basically, the backers themselves fund the shipping costs.
Right.
And that's something that I didn't know. I thought that I would have to pay for it at the beginning. And if if you charge at the beginning, you might have to make up for any differences. So, like, if they were supposed to, if you made them pay 5 and it ends up that they have to pay 8, you will have to make up the difference. Like, you will have to cover the extra costs. But if you work with a fulfillment company, they should be able to provide you the information to make, like, estimates. And, that's why working with professionals for that, I think it's very important.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because, unfortunately, one of the people that I have watched do a Kickstarter did not do this, was paid for the Kickstarter, and essentially spent all the money, whether, I don't know on what. I'm not going to claim to know anything about how it was spent, but I'm assuming that there were expenses they were expecting in the manufacturing of their product, and by the time that it came around to they finally got everything and it was there, they had no money to ship things out, and they decided to do it all themselves. And so instead, despite the fact that it took them, it's still going on several years later, where they still have product that they're slowly shipping out because they have to pay for the shipping for everything.
What a nightmare.
Yeah. So it's like, so anyway, and again, expenses come up. It's, doesn't mean that you're horrible at saving money.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. I mean, if you think about it, with COVID and then the whole shortage of paper, I don't know if people are aware, but there was a whole, like, in 2020 and 2021, paper was there was a huge shortage on paper. It was very difficult to like procure paper, and which sounds crazy, I know, but it's true. Right. And then there was the whole thing with the ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal that also affected, like, shipping containers, shipping around the world. There's an order in which shipments are made, and that basically delayed everything for months and months. And it's you now, like, when the there's always something that can happen, and right. Worldwide economics and politics and all of that, it sounds absurd, but that is going to impact your little crowdfunding. Right.
I don't think that a lot of people realize just how much there's so many tiny little things that can affect a project, even if it's not a Kickstarter.
Yeah, absolutely.
We see it all the time as freelancers, the working with companies that produce books and everything else. There's a lot of deadlines that get changed and projects that get completely dropped.
That is one
Yeah.
of the reasons why working in comics is really, really challenging, because it's like the extreme of teamwork, because it's a lot of people that usually work in very different areas of the world,
Hmm.
and you know, one always misses a deadline. There is always something
Yes.
somewhere on the timeline that does not go as planned. Not because anyone is lazy. Some people are lazy. Some people are
Right.
very bad at their jobs. But also, a lot of people are just, maybe they're sick. Maybe something happened in their family. Maybe, the weather was bad and they were without electricity for 3 days.
Right.
There's always something that happens, and not everyone is very good at communicating it. Not everyone is very good at calculating how much they can recover from a delay.
Hmm.
And comics is a mess for that, because especially when you work on monthly series and you're expected to deliver the thing that goes to print at the end of the month every month.
Hmm.
In most cases, I would say in most cases the monthlies are done month by month. And so if you mess up, it's the case in which, then you have to color a whole issue in 5 days, or like you have to draw 1,000,000 pages in 2 minutes. And that is not, sure, 1,000,000 pages in 2 minutes is, of course, it's an exaggeration, but
Right.
it's not too far from the truth.
No, no, it's really, really not. It is one of the reasons why, like, when I very first started creating maps and everything else, the amount of people that are like, oh, you need to work for Wizards of the Coast, and or you need to work for this company or that company. And I'm like, I don't technically want to work for a company. I will freelance or be a contractor. I don't want to work for a company, because ultimately, as much as that seems like a stable and paycheck and everything, it's not. And we've seen this past year very much so. People were laid off left and right with no notice. But the other thing is that when you are when you're doing freelance work, as you're doing a project, you don't get to post any of the project that you're creating. You have therefore no socials really going on. You have nothing to offer patrons. Like, there's limiting on what you can do and have other income coming in.
Yes, and I've had projects that have launched like 3 years after I'd done the work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's excruciating, because on one side you're extremely happy it's finally out and you can finally talk about it, you can share it, and on the other side it's also kind of like, that work is 3 years old and I don't like it anymore.
Yep. Yeah.
But it's finally out.
But hey, it's there. Yeah. Absolutely. And there's been so many things where I'm just like, not that I dislike the work, but in a way, not as happy with it, or I end up not liking the company, or I don't like the project anymore, and I'm just like, yeah, I did this, and then I just move on.
Yeah, I absolutely can relate. There's like stuff that I'm excited now. There's the in a few weeks, so at the beginning of, I think, mid-June, comes out my newest work for Critical Role. So I colored the upcoming Mighty Nein Origins Caduceus Clay graphic novel.
Right.
And that didn't take years to finally be out, but yeah, I think I finished working on it last October. And
Yeah.
I can't wait for it. Well, I colored all of it between mid-September and October. So in a month and a half I did that. And I can't wait for it to be out. I'm just like, I want to show people. I want them it's so pretty. It's so beautiful. It's one of the prettiest books I've ever colored, and I think it looks stunning. I just want it to be out. And then I want it to be out.
I feel your pain. So I have a project that I have been working on, and I'm not kidding, for so many years now. And it's one of my favorite pieces that I've ever done. It is so intricate. It is so detailed. It is so, it's such a wonderfully intimate piece. It's a love story to this entire story and fandom and everything else. I don't want to say which one it is, but it like years of it going on, and I can't share any part of it. I can't even say I'm working on it. Nothing. And
Yes.
I don't, and we're so close to it being done. I can't handle it.
I feel you. Like, there's a comic project that has finally been announced. So it's a project that will be published by Image Comics this July, and it's called The Domain, and it's basically, it's kind of like a meta story, because it's the comics that the characters of another comic create. And it's written by my good friend and fellow comic artist Chip Zdarsky, who's for those who are like into comics, is, other than being the one of the amazing creators of Sex Criminals, that is a bestseller, New York Times bestseller, and he's also done amazing work on Spider-Man, on Batman. Like, he's incredible. We worked together on other comics before, and on the pencils is Rachel Stott, who's an incredible British comic artist, and we worked together on Doctor Who for a long time, and I just love this team, and we started working together on this comic. I think it was probably late summer of 2022, and like last week it was finally announced, and it's not out yet, but I can finally say that I have worked on it, which is just like, oh my god.
Yeah, this has been almost
4 years
5 years.
Whoa.
Yeah, it might be longer. I'm not sure, but it's been 5 years, and it part of it is, in the very beginning, the person who decided to commission me for this was it just got slammed with a ton of work. So it was like trying to get me any of the information was really difficult. And then there was a lot of going back and forth. And then they decided to like, I need an assistant. So I then started working with the assistant, who would then go to them and then get back to me. And so like the process was even longer. And the other thing was like, I think that when they hired me, I don't think that they were expecting me to ask so many questions. And because it is a very, very detailed pieces, it's numerous. I don't think that they were expecting me to be like, okay, well, what about this? What about this? Like, I do a lot of back and forth when it comes to particular art. When it comes to like regular land maps and everything else, 90 miles an hour, give me as little as possible. I fill in everything. I'm so good at this.
Yes, I feel you.
Right.
Like the same.
But when it comes to like other art projects, I want the back and forth, especially if it's something where I can tell that it's a really, really personal piece to the person. Then I want to make sure it is as you envisioned it as possible. This is absolutely a love letter to this particular fandom, and I hope it sees the light of day sometime. But like,
I hope so too. I want to see now.
Right. I'm done. I'm done with the drawing it part. I'm just waiting for them to like give me any edits, and then I get to finish the coloring, and we'll be done. And I'm just like, please get back to me. You have no idea how badly I need this done. It's such a great piece. How did you, as I just jumped to the next question, so sorry.
Yes.
How did you get into coloring? Like, how did you get into comics?
So, it was a happy accident. I never studied art, and I didn't think I was going to do art for a living. Mainly because my home country, Italy, it's like, if rates worldwide are bad, in Italy they're worse.
Oh.
And like payments are always late. It's the whole thing. So I actually studied languages, and I would like my aim was to be a game translator and localizer.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I have a bachelor's degree in Japanese language and culture, and I thought that's what I was going to do. And then I realized that translation somehow, at least in Italy, paid even less than art.
God.
And yeah, I translated one of those, like the game guides, like the guides that tell you like where to find all the treasures or like all the things, but like it was an official Final Fantasy game guide.
Okay.
I translated one of those from English to Italian, and it was 2 years a page.
Oh my God. No. Just no.
I don't know if it's because the company that I was doing it for was particularly bad. I don't know if it's because that's what they were paying. It was like it's actually probably my first and only like actual credit doing this.
Right.
Whilst this was happening and I was studying languages, of course, I've always been passionate about drawing and having fun creatively. And it's funny because when I was a kid, I didn't like coloring. I liked drawing. And then the more I grew up, and I was just like, I actually really like coloring. And during my university years, I started collaborating with a very talented artist, and he really liked drawing and he liked coloring a little bit less. And so like every once in a while, I really liked his characters and I liked his style, so we would collaborate. I would color his stuff, and he was also drawing comics. And so, just for fun, like I started coloring some of his pages, and then I thought, I kind of like doing this, and I put together a portfolio, more as a side thing gig that I could do. I was doing, illustration commissions from time to time on the good old DeviantArt days, when DeviantArt was lovely and welcoming and was still a community, and it was not a scam full of AI crap.
Yeah, not the burning dumpster fire that it now is. Yeah.
Yep. And basically, so I started coloring his stuff for fun, and we actually did. I colored some of his line work for some TTRPG manuals back in the day for the Fate system.
Okay.
And at some point, I put together a portfolio and with some of his stuff and other stuff from other pencilers online. And he was offered to do a short comic for like a Terminator special edition for a DVD.
Okay.
And he was like, "Wait, do you want to color this for me?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, that would be fun." So we sent my portfolio to the publisher. He said yes, and basically they liked how we worked. It was a short comic. I think it was 8 or 10 pages, not too long. And I had lots of fun doing it. And I was starting to think that it was interesting and fulfilling. And after that, basically the publisher came back not too long after saying, "Hey, we have a series." A long series for Warhammer 40k that we are starting. Would you like to work on it? And so that's how I got my foot into comic. By then I had started sending my portfolio to a few publishers, and I had actually written, the very first gig that I got was as a filler colorist. So sometimes when, as I was saying before, when everyone's late, and there's not enough time for one person to do all the coloring, other colorists, just like other pencilers, might be hired to do some of the pages to make sure that the comic comes out. And that's why if someone's reading a comic and sometimes some pages look different, it's because they're like drawn and or colored by other people.
Gotcha.
And so I had written to Aspen Comics, that was like the publisher that I was super in love with when I was like in my late teens. And I sent my very first portfolio that I sent to them, and they hired me to do my like some filler pages as a colorist, which is like, whoa. I was like, that was like, if you asked me what my dream gig would have been at the time, I would have said Aspen Comics, and it was the first gig that I got.
Right?
So that
Right.
was great. And yeah, basically I started working with Titan Comics on the Warhammer 40k series. That was 12 issues and it was lots of fun. It was really steep learning curve because basically when I started, it took me a day to color a page. And I
Mhm.
mean, those were complex pages. They're not like two faces on zero
Right.
background. They were like spaceships and, you know, a million things moving in the background and huge people in huge armor shooting with huge guns. Like it's the whole thing. It's they're not easy pages.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, basically I worked on that for a little bit over a year because it took, yeah, I think a little bit over a year to publish the 12 issues.
Mhm.
And then after that, the same Titan Comics offered me to work on Doctor Who, and basically I've never stopped since that. I started in 20, I think Warhammer was 2017.
Nice. How old are you, by the way, if I can ask?
I'm 35.
Oh, okay. Just because everyone's like, oh, you have to start when you're younger. I don't think so.
No, I mean, as I said, I was going for a completely different career, and I would
Yeah.
say 2017 is when I said, okay, I'm doing this. And when I said this, it was comics. Like I was like full-time comics. I was coloring several comic um, series at the same time. Also, I was very lucky and privileged to have a very supportive family.
Right.
I was working at home, living with my family, because otherwise I would have had no money to live on. Because if I had to rent a place in
Yeah.
Rome, and comics doesn't pay well, especially at the beginning, but in general, it's not the most well-paying gig for how much you work.
Hmm.
So I was at home, I was working a lot, and I basically saved up all my money for years. So that then when that happened, I said, okay, I can make the jump. I can be full-time this because
Right.
I have a little bit of money saved up, and if things go bad, I have, a cushion to fall back on.
So for the first time in like, I don't know, forever it feels like, um when I was younger, like many artists, or maybe not many, but I wanted to be in comics when I was a kid. And immediately out of high school, I started trying to work in, whether it was comics, whether it was video games, either one of those. I was like, just look at my stuff. Um, and was unfortunately told, like, especially at the time, women aren't in this industry.
Yeah.
Go paint romance novel covers is actually what one man said to me.
Mm.
Uh-huh. And I was like, you dick. Um, but life had a whole other plan for me, which is fine. I actually loved the career that I used to have, and it made it that when I left that and wanted to actually, start doing my art for a full time, not only did it give me ample experience in running companies and running a business and marketing and all the things that when you're a freelancer, you have to learn how to do. If you have no prior business experience, you have to learn how to do this on the fly. And it's why so many fail.
Yeah. It's
It's,
rough.
it is, it's so many hats. We do everything ourselves, from marketing, the artwork, the design, the communications, networking,
Counting. Yeah.
cons, accounting, taxes, and on top of having a life. And if you want a relationship or have kids or ever want to leave your house.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
very accurate.
Yeah, it's a lot and it's overwhelming. And but the interesting thing was, I didn't intend to get into maps. They kind of like landed in my lap, which I'm incredibly grateful for. But it was funny because last year before, I was like, I need to do any art that isn't map related, because I do so much nothing but map art for the past 10 years. And my wife jokingly was like, "Oh, you should bring out your characters." And I was like, "No, absolutely not. They're doodles." So I try and doodle every day for myself. I don't share them. It is entirely for me because I realize like I will absolutely change the way that I'm doing some artwork if I know I'm going to share it on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just doing really scribbly, sloppy. I just want to get like certain shapes out. I just want to play with it. And also because it helped me transition from paper to digital, which was the hardest thing in the world for me back in 2018. So
Wow. Yeah.
yeah.
It's rough. It's a difficult transition.
Oh yeah. And now I'm trying to learn how to do coloring. It is one of the reasons why my maps have a very specific one type of color.
Which works great. So.
Right. I found what works for them. That is awesome. Stuff that I did before when I was doing more traditional work and on paper, I loved it. Very colorful, and I can't figure out how to quite do that digitally and still have it look the way I want. So it's one of the reasons why I'm like, okay, I'm just going to keep playing with it. But I had a friend of mine actually convince me that I should bring out some of my characters. So I decided to, and I drew it for the first time yesterday. And I went to color her, and I was like, it looks nothing like how I would color her on paper. And I'm like, this looks like shit.
Nah.
I mean, it's not that bad, but it's just for the fact that I was like, wow, it is so different than doing it traditionally, and I'm just like, oh my god. So what tools do you use? What software? What do you have specific brushes? Did you make your own?
So unfortunately, I haven't been able to jump the Photoshop ship yet, because I've been working on Photoshop since I was 13. And so it's kind of like in my blood.
Yeah, no, it was hard for me to leave it too.
Yeah, and as you know, I mean, being a freelancer, being, with deadlines and stuff, it's very difficult to set aside time to learn a new software. So I still work in Photoshop. I draw with and color and do any like drawing and coloring with a very, very, very old refurbished Wacom Intuos small. So like
gotcha.
one of the tiny ones. I had a Cintiq for like a year and a half, and I sold it because I hated it.
Oh wow, really? Why?
It's of course it's super subjective, but it's the only time in my life when I had back pain was when I was working on a Cintiq, because I couldn't find like a comfortable position to work on it. I think the fact that it was not one of those big ones. I think if I would have to go with a Cintiq, I would have to go probably with a big one, so I can kind of like sit up and work on it, kind of like on a canvas on something that is like a high support, because then I was kind of like half crouched and this thing, and it was not big enough, and so basically I hated the fact that my hand was in the way 3/4 of the time. Like my hand was always in front of everything,
right?
And the screen was small. I didn't have a keyboard because it was one of the one and all Cintiqs that I did for a time was Cintiq Companion. So basically it was kind of like an iPad,
right?
I live constantly with my left hand on the keyboard. I'm always clicking shortcuts, and so not having a keyboard and having to click manually on all the commands to do the things slowed me down and frustrated me immensely. And if I had to have a keyboard, I was like, what's the point? I might as well have a laptop.
Right.
and I really didn't enjoy the feel of the pencil on it, and I think it's because I started my digital drawing like experience when I was like 13, 14 with a mouse at the beginning, of course, because that was what would use to draw at the beginning, on a computer, like looking straight in front of me. And so I think I had that kind of like the issue that some folks have with looking in a different place to where your hand is.
Yeah.
I think
that person.
No, I know, and I know that I probably would struggle a lot with it if I had to learn now, because it's a difficult thing. I learned when I was like young enough that probably I don't remember struggling with it.
Right.
And so then having to move back to like to the Cintiq, it really didn't feel great. But yeah, basically I had that Cintiq, and then it kind of died on me as well at some point, and I had to get it fixed. And when I moved, it was actually before I moved to the UK. I was here because I came here because my partner is British and he's here, so I came I moved here to be with him. But basically at some point I was here for a holiday, and the tablet it was my Cintiq at the time. Basically it broke, and I was like screaming on the Twitter void, and a fellow artist who lived in London, that is not too far from where I am, said, I have an old Intuos, do you want it? And I was like, yes, please. And so I first got that secondhand from him, and I was like, you know what, I should just get back to using this. And the year after, when I moved here, I bought this refurbished Intuos, super old school, for like £45 on the Wacom site, and I've been using it for nearly 4 years.
Yeah, I have a very large one, because one, visual impairment makes working on a tiny screen virtually impossible for me.
Those are great. I think it's a great resource to have.
Oh yeah, they're ridiculously expensive. I have to admit, though, I did try some of the less expensive ones, and I think that comparatively, if you don't have a visual impairment, so what happens is, because I only have vision in one eye, I can't. I have virtually no depth perception.
Yes.
So when there's a glare or a reflection on a surface, it's really hard for me to see past it.
Ah, that's very interesting. Yeah, I hadn't considered that. That must be really tough. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's what stopped me from doing any digital work for so long, because I desperately wanted to try it, because I love learning new mediums. And it wasn't until I got the newer Wacom came out. I can't call it a Wacom. I know that's how they want me to.
I don't know. Wacom.
Wacom sounds like
potato. Yeah, exactly. I don't mind. I never know either.
It sounds like I'm beating something.
Wacom.
Right, like a whack-a-mole, yeah. But there's an experience center, a Wacom experience center in Portland, Oregon, that I got an opportunity because they finally came out with a different type of surface on them, which was supposed to be almost entirely anti-glare. So I went to the experience, I sat down, and within less than a minute knew that I would be able to use it, and ordered one.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, if you can, it's so difficult when you have just to like buy it without knowing how it is.
Right.
It's a lot of money to expend.
It is. The other thing is that the texture on this has like a little bit of resistance, like drawing on paper.
Yeah.
And I love that, because again, drawing on glass is really not as easy as it sounds.
No,
Uh,
it's such a peculiar texture, and the way, even for me that I was already used to the digital, and so like
mm-hmm.
already like drawing on plastic,
Right.
it's different, because then also the way in which the nib interacts with the surface,
Yes.
it all comes back to your hand and to your brain. And
Right.
it's
And I'm
so
like,
difficult.
oh, so yeah, but I think I did pretty well.
Yes. Ah.
Not too bad.
No, I
Uh,
think you did great.
but now I get to now I get to play with I did decide to finally like yeah I'll share my so her name is Aggie. She is the tiniest witch. Uh
Oh.
when this is how old this is. I was back in high school. I used to draw her on all of my like your books, your notebooks, and everything else. She was just something I doodled, and it turned into like a whole bunch of like cute little characters that kind of like went along with her. And then I used to cut her out and put her in my pocket, and that's how she's a pocket witch. And
Oh, so
yeah,
lovely.
so when I was like, hey, I want to do my doodles and everything else, and I need to learn like how to do something other than maps, how to actually do more rendering. And my friend's like, oh, you should do like your full on landscapes. And I was like, well, no, because my landscapes are they're pretty loose. I like how they everything's done in pencil. So it's still not the kind of coloring that I want to do. So I'm learning with my characters. It should be fun. I'm terrified of this.
Oh, I get you. I've just recently I've just recently done an illustration for fun. Which is the Caduceus paint piece that you saw online.
Yeah, it's on my
And
phone.
thank you. It made me really happy. But that's basically the first full illustration that I've done in like nearly a year.
Yeah.
Because with the work on the deck and then comic stuff and other things in the middle, I was always working. I was doing lots of things, but I didn't sit down to do my own thing, especially because to avoid, I struggled a lot to stop working on weekends.
Right.
And so I had to very seriously take no drawing on weekends stand for quite a while, because otherwise I would always end up doing work. And so basically for a year I didn't paint anything that was like for fun or for me, and this huge knot of anxiety and pressure that has built inside me for like my own stuff. Or like there is actually like a couple of illustrations with, funnily enough, are all Critical Role fan, but that I've had either sketched or in my to-do list for, and I'm not kidding, at least 2, if not 3 years.
Oh
each.
yeah.
And I'm that Caduceus piece was kind of like the way for me to say I am doing this again now. Like I'm doing it, and I remember, and I was just so panicked. I was so scared. And it was just
gorgeous.
like, why was I scared? Like, there's nothing, it was a piece. If it was bad, I could just not post it anyway. Like, that's fine. But I had so much anxiety going into it, so thinking, I'm not going to be able to draw this. I'm not going to be able to, like, it's not going to look, I struggle quite a bit to imagine what a piece is going to look like in my head. Like, I don't have the clear image. I have kind of like sensations of the piece that I'm going to create, but I can't really, a lot of people can like see the drawing. I can like imagine some of the details. I have a vibe, like a feeling that I want that piece to give me.
Yeah.
And that's so like, I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm not going to be able to do this. And so I was just like working myself up with so much stress. And like, okay, I just have to sit down and do it because I just have to.
Right. Yeah,
and so I understand the anxiety of like, I want to do this thing, but what if it's not good?